I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today about Immunovia and the opportunities that we have ahead of us, the advantages that we bring to the market, and some of the progress that we've made since launching our test in September. For those of you who are not familiar with Immunovia, we are a company that is exclusively focused on making an impact in pancreatic cancer, increasing the survival rate of pancreatic cancer through early detection in high-risk individuals. And we do that through our PancreaSure test. I'm Jeff Borcherding. I'm very proud to be the CEO of this company and to share a little bit more about what we're doing with you today. Immunovia represents a tremendous opportunity, both in terms of the company and the investment opportunity. You see here several of the reasons for that attractive opportunity in Immunovia. There's a significant unmet need. We'll talk briefly about that today. We have a proven, accurate blood test to detect pancreatic cancer early. And again, I'll share with you a little bit of the data there. Because of the progress that we've already made, we've fully developed the product. We have done several clinical studies. There's limited product and clinical risk in this opportunity. As I mentioned, we launched our test in the United States in September of last year. So I'm very excited to share with you some initial results of that launch. And that'll actually be where we spend most of our time today, because I know that's an area of a lot of interest. In addition to the work that we've done to commercialize the test, one of the things that's been a big focus for us is to develop and execute the plan of clinical studies that are needed to secure reimbursement for the test in the US. And that progress has been significant over the last year in 2025. We also have a number of clinical studies that are ongoing now, some of which will read out in 2026, some of which will read out in the years after that. But collectively, they give us an excellent opportunity to put together the kind of clinical proof that's important to secure reimbursement from both government payers as well as commercial insurance companies in the US. Finally, we raised money late last year and closed a rights issue in November. That gives us the opportunity to go through most of 2026 to move forward with our commercialization plans that we'll talk about today, and also to fund those clinical studies that, again, are so critical for reimbursement. A little bit about the opportunity and the challenge in pancreatic cancer. Pancreatic cancer is incredibly deadly. In fact, it is the third leading cause of cancer-related deaths in both the US and in Europe. And the reason for that is simple. Because pancreatic cancer is usually not detected until symptoms appear, we find the disease too late. Only 1 in 5 people are diagnosed when they have stage 1 or 2 pancreatic cancer. If we can catch the cancer then, the 5-year survival rate is 44%. Unfortunately, 80% of the time, we don't find it until it's at stage 3 or 4. The cancer has already spread, surgery is no longer an option, and the survival rate over 5 years drops to just 3%. PancreaSure is our answer to this clinical need and this clinical challenge. It is a blood test for early detection of pancreatic cancer in individuals that are at high risk of the disease. For family history, maybe they have genetic mutations, maybe they have pancreatic cysts, which are small growths on their pancreas. The PancreaSure test is validated. We have proven its accuracy across multiple clinical studies now. It is minimally invasive. It's a simple blood draw that can be done annually or twice a year. Because it's a blood draw, it's convenient. That blood draw can happen anywhere, and the blood is then sent to our lab in North Carolina in the US for processing. And it's also affordable, much more affordable than the imaging-based alternatives that today are often used to look for pancreatic cancer. I won't go into a lot of detail about our clinical studies and the accuracy of the PancreaSure test, but I did want to share this summary. What you see on the left are the results from 2 clinical studies that we did. We look at both the sensitivity and the specificity of PancreaSure. Sensitivity means, can we detect the cancer when it's there? Specificity means, do we avoid a false positive if we run a blood sample and there's no cancer present? What you can see in these 2 studies is that we are detecting somewhere between 77 and 78% of pancreatic cancers at stage 1 and 2, so very early when intervention is still possible. We also have very high specificity, 94% in one study, 88% in a second study. And on the right-hand side of the screen, you see how that compares to the imaging-based approaches that are used for pancreatic cancer screening today. Whether it's endoscopic ultrasound, MRI, CT, these are invasive procedures. And as you can see, the accuracy of the PancreaSure test compares very favorably with these approaches. Based on this data, we made plans to launch our test in the United States at the beginning of September, and we are in the early stages of that launch today. What you see here is the targeted advocacy is the first focus of our launch, and that's really where we'll put our time and attention in 2026. We will go after the key opinion leaders and those top programs across the country. Initially, we did that through our management team going out and meeting with these centers. We have just hired 2 strategic account managers to be salespeople for us, and we're looking for a third. We've had really good initial and enthusiastic response to the rollout of the test. We've got 10 leading pancreatic cancer centers that implemented the test in the first month. We will be releasing our financial results in February, and when we do, we're excited to share results from the 4th quarter when we had additional centers come on board and begin ordering PancreaSure tests. One of the groups that's using the test is the Northwestern University Medical Group, and you can see here a quote from their leader, Raj Kaswani, who talks about the fact that the PancreaSure is a valuable additional option for their high-risk patients because of the fact that it's non-invasive and much easier than what you see with imaging. A little bit about how we sell, because that's been one of the questions we've heard from investors is, what's the process of bringing a new surveillance center on board? And you can see here that we start with prospecting and networking to get our foot in the door. We have an introductory meeting where we introduce PancreaSure, and really importantly, we understand what's going on in that center, what are their challenges, and how might we be able to help through implementing PancreaSure. We then start to work our way through the organization. These are often large, complex organizations where there may be as many as a dozen people that are involved in the decision to use a test like PancreaSure. Once we get approval from everyone, we then move to an implementation meeting. We help the organization place their first order. And then from there, we move into what I would call sort of the adoption phase. What we're trying to do there is help them see where they can use the test, how it can be used. We also bring in best practices from other high-risk screening programs. We have these 3 strategic account managers that I mentioned who have come on board and will really be a driving force in making sure that we continue to have the commercial success that we've seen and that we can build on it. In this chart, I've taken the prior process and highlighted in white some of the places where we really see the value of those strategic account managers, where they can go beyond what we've been able to do with the management team selling the test. A lot of what they'll be able to do is help us identify new prospects, get in to speak with people that we haven't worked with previously. Once we do, they will also help us to dig deeper, to get stronger relationships throughout that account. And then finally, they'll be critical for that ongoing follow-up to really make sure that not only do we have the center that says that they want to use the test, but it's top of mind and they're thinking about the test and using it on a daily and weekly basis. As we think about commercialization, one of the things that's important is to ensure that we've got the ability from a regulatory perspective to sell the test in all 50 US states. We were excited to get approval from California. That was the 46th state that we now have approval in. We just have 3 more that are remaining. We're very excited about California. It's a terrific opportunity for us. There are a number of high-risk surveillance programs for pancreatic cancer in the state, including Stanford University, which is a very prestigious university in the San Francisco area that has decided to implement the PancreaSure test. And you can see here a quote from Dr. Walter Park, who leads that pancreatic program at Stanford, talking about how the test is going to be an important part of strengthening their program and enabling earlier diagnosis. One of the things that Dr. Park is very excited about is the fact that they're seeing more and more people who want pancreatic cancer surveillance and who qualify for that surveillance based on being at high risk for different reasons. He made the comment to me, we can't keep up with the demand right now. And we can't keep up with it because if we're going to do imaging to monitor each of these individuals, we just don't have enough capacity in our hospital. The PancreaSure test gives them the opportunity to screen people without always having to rely on an endoscopic ultrasound or on an MRI. And so he's very excited to implement the program, and we're excited to work with him and several others who have already expressed interest in implementing the test in this first quarter of the year in California. So just to reiterate why we believe there's such a strong opportunity with Immunovia. First, there's a significant unmet need to address the need for early detection in pancreatic cancer. We have a blood test that has proven to be accurate. We've done multiple clinical studies to demonstrate the sensitivity and the specificity of the test. Because of all of that work, there's limited risk around the product or future clinical studies. And as I mentioned, we've had very enthusiastic response to the launch. You saw we've been adopted in numerous centers already, and we're excited to share more information about that in February when we announce our full year 2025 results. As we go into 2026, we'll continue to build on that commercial momentum. We'll also be completing the clinical studies that we need in order to submit for reimbursement. And we expect our first submission will be for Medicare coverage in the middle part of 2026. And then finally, we're excited to have the support of our investors to be able to achieve these milestones as a result of the rights issue that we completed in Q4 that will provide funding as we go through these next several months and work on achieving those milestones. Thank you very much, and look forward to some questions from Lars.
Thank you very much, Jeff. So can I ask a couple of general questions first?
Yes.
There seems to be quite a lot of changes in the US medical insurance system with Medicaid, different reimbursement. I mean, seems to be some sort of pullback there in the number of insured and the terms. Could you give us some flavor on that, and how does that potentially affect the oncology market in general and your niche in particular?
Yes. So we see those as significant changes to the US healthcare system, but for Immunovia in particular, they're not really very meaningful. So the primary changes that are happening are a reduction in the number of people that are covered by a government program called Medicaid. There have been some legislation changes that happened last year. As a result of that, fewer people will be covered by Medicaid. The reality is, as we look at our forecast, we have not built in revenue around Medicaid patients. That's generally the last group of people to get reimbursed for a diagnostic test like ours, and it usually takes several years. The important source of revenue is Medicare coverage from the government, which covers those individuals who are over age 65, and then the commercial insurance plans that cover the vast majority of the rest of the population. So no significant changes there that they're going to make a difference. So it doesn't really have much of an impact on us from a reimbursement standpoint.
Well, that's reassuring. And it's nice to hear the very positive feedback you get from the market. We heard in an earlier presentation, specifically a participant at the JP Morgan Life Science Conference, that it seems that investor sentiment is picking up. I don't know if you have anything to share in that perspective when you talk to investors, like if the mood is improving. Or
I do think it's improving. I think we've seen that. I think we've seen a higher level of optimism, both from financial investors as well as from different potential strategic partners that we may ultimately want to work with. As the market improves, I think we're seeing a little bit less conservatism. People are more willing to invest in and consider an early stage technology like PancreaSure that is at the early stages of commercial launch. We obviously are still working to secure reimbursement. And I think we're starting to see people being more interested in assets that are at that stage like we are. One of the other things that I think helps is there was a large acquisition in the diagnostic space. You may have seen that Abbott Laboratories acquired Exact Sciences, which is a large and successful oncology diagnostics company. We think that that is a signal of strong interest in oncology in the diagnostic space. We also think that it could lead to additional acquisitions, and I think that could really help us. I think if you compare the diagnostics market to, for example, the pharma market, one of the things that's been missing for early stage diagnostics companies is you haven't seen as many acquisitions as what you see in pharma. And so I think if that market starts to open up, we start to see a few more acquisitions, I think that will further bolster investor sentiment.
Right. Another quite general question, but in the recent months, there's been some concerns about tariffs. So could you just explain for the listeners, would that impact you? I mean, where is your production? And I would suppose that input value is quite a small fraction of sales price. So perhaps the impact wouldn't be that great, even if production is in a tariff country.
Yeah, that's correct. It's minimal for us. We do manufacture some of the components of the PancreaSure test through a supplier in Germany. So we do have some very, very small exposure to the tariffs. But the reality is when you look at our income statement and our operating expenses, the vast majority of our operating expenses are related to conducting clinical studies, and they are related to personnel costs and commercialization costs. So those things really aren't affected in any meaningful way by the tariffs.
We have a couple of questions from our listeners.
Terrific.
One is, you mentioned in your press release from January 19 that you've seen a large interest from clinics in California. You touched upon parts of this in your presentation. So could you confirm that you're now expecting to book the first commercial revenues from PancreaSure in California already in Q1 2026?
Yeah, so I think what we would expect in Q1 is that we will sign up multiple centers who will begin using the test.
Right.
Usually, if you want to think about the sequence and how things happen, we generally will sign the center up. There's a period of time where they're implementing the test and starting to use it. Then you start to see volume increase. In terms of the revenue piece, that's really going to depend on the billing that we do starting this year. One of the things that we're doing even before we get payer coverage is we're going to start billing insurance to see if we can get some reimbursement before we have formal coverage decisions. So I think we have to see how that plays out, and that'll impact California as well as the rest of our states.
Right. Another question from our listeners is that your board recently chose to withdraw a suggestion regarding a reverse split of the share. Would it be a fair interpretation that the board and major owners now see considerable potential for share price increases now when you are at the verge of commercial rollout in the United States? Long question, but I hope you got the gist of it.
I did, yeah. So we did make the decision to not move forward with the reverse split. We got some feedback from shareholders who said they had had a bad experience with reverse splits in other companies when those splits were done at a time when the share price didn't have significant momentum going forward already. So we've decided to postpone it. But I think that we continue to be bullish on Immunovia. We continue to believe that there's a lot of value in the company that isn't fully reflected in the stock price and in the market capitalization of the company. When you look at the fact that this is a large market with a big unmet need, we have an existing product, we've had good clinical results behind it, and we're getting good feedback from the market. So we do see good opportunity going forward.
That sounds like a very good concluding remark, Jeff. So thank you very much for your presentation and your time.
Thank
Thumbs
you.
up from me. I will do it online as well. There we go.
Appreciate it.
So good luck, and I hope we will have the chance to speak again soon.
I appreciate it. Thanks very much for your time.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.